Without a doubt, we are living in the end time. That means the upcoming presidential election, just over 6 months away, will be of utmost importance. Well, we know where President Trump stands on the salient issues, but what about Joe Biden? Well, we will analyze this question on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me on this edition of End of the Age. Now, we've been on the air since 1998 on the radio. And for those of you who are new listeners, when we started on the radio in 98, this program was called Politics and Religion. You know, the two things you never talk about. Well, we talked about them every day. Of course, my father-in-law did. I wasn't on the radio at that point. But today, we're going to kind of get back into that. You know, looking through the lens of Bible prophecy, it lets us know what to look for in the near future. And I'm going to mainly focus on, a lot of times we talk specifically about prophecy, we get into religion. But on today's program, I'm going to kind of get into the political realm. And like I said before, with a clear understanding of the times and with all the prophecies converging at the same time, this upcoming presidential election will quite possibly be the most important in the history of the United States of America, because the next president could be the one that presides over the beginning of the final 7 years, at least America's role in that. Now, in all of the salient issues, we pretty much know where President Trump stands. He's been in office, 3.5 years now. But I want to talk about some of the prophetic issues. That's what I'm going to try to stay in that lane today. And most importantly, of course, Israel and the United States, the withdrawal from world government in the end time, and some of the moral issues, abortion, the LGBT agenda. You've seen how prior to the Trump administration, how those issues were pretty much flipped on their head here. And on the global stage, and in America. So I want to talk today, like I said, you know where President Trump stands. But what about his opponent, former Vice President Joe Biden? You know, unless something crazy happens, and I read an article on this today, I looked at Hillary Clinton endorsing Joe Biden yesterday. And I thought, no, surely not. Surely not. But unless something crazy happens, like Hillary Clinton coming in as a candidate in the 11th hour, which is possible, it looks like Joe Biden will be the other name on the ballot besides Donald Trump come November. So the question is, where does he stand on the issues that matter to those of us who follow the prophecies of the Bible? So now you can see what our program was devoted to early on. We still talk about it today, but early on we just said, hey, the name of the program is Politics and Religion. The two things you never talk about, that's what we talk about. Now it's called End of the Age because of our television program. We went on with End of the Age, and we changed the radio to match that. But today it's going to be, in light of Bible prophecy, where does Joe Biden stand on some of these salient issues? So number one, I want to begin with, you know that the Bible prophesies a world government will be established and ruled by the Antichrist prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And we're currently at the culmination of the formation of this world governing entity. And Joe Biden supports this world government in every way possible. He's a globalist. You say, well, how do you know that? Well, you just look at his track record. He's been in the public eye. He's been in politics for what, 40-some years now? And you look at his track record and then look at what happened during the 8 years of the Obama administration. And the first point, I'm going to cover several points today. The first point is going to be remarks by Vice President Joe Biden at the World Economic Forum in 2017. You understand, President Trump had been elected in 2016. He's coming into office in early 2017. He's going to be at his inauguration. And just prior to that, in 2017, former Vice President Joe Biden made a speech. It was his last speech before leaving office at the World Economic Forum. And he says, after World War II, I'm quoting, after World War II, we built institutions and alliances to advance our shared security, our attention to building and sustaining a liberal international order. This is world government. Liberal international order with the United States and Europe at its core was the bedrock of the success the world enjoyed in the second half of the 20th century. So what's he doing? His entire speech was devoted to protecting and promoting the liberal international order, world government.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank Endtime for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Endtime Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
You know, everybody, if the coming up election was just based on one issue, whether we go into world government or whether we don't, we pull out of world government, from a prophetic standpoint, it's a no-brainer for me who I would vote for. And on all of the issues that I'll go through today, former President Joe Biden and President Trump are diametrically opposed on, except for one, and we'll talk about that. But on this one issue of world government, if you understand the prophecies of the Bible, the Antichrist will eventually reign over this one world governing body, and the power that's behind all of this is Satan himself. Revelation 13:2, Satan, or the dragon, gave him his seat, power, and great authority. So it makes you want to dive right off in and be an advocate of world government, right? Absolutely not. Well, that's what we're looking at here. You've got one candidate, President Trump, who says, I don't want anything to do with world government. We're pulling out of that. And I've done programs and articles and things on him pulling out of world government in many ways. On the other hand, you've got former Vice President Joe Biden, who is a full-on advocate of world government. In his last speech, just prior to leaving office, he goes on to say, today, I'd like to speak of the sources of those pressures and about why it is imperative that we act urgently to defend the liberal international order. The term liberal international order, New World Order, world government, it's all the same thing. He goes on to say, these are the pressures that are undermining support for the liberal international order from the inside. This is a politics at odds with our values and with the vision that built in and sustains the liberal international order. He says the impulse to, now notice, he knows that President Trump is coming into office, and so he takes a jab at him. He says, well, you know, the impulse to hunker down, to shut the gates, to build walls. You understand what President Trump was saying when he was a candidate? I'm going to build a wall. Well, he's saying the impulse to hunker down, shut the gates, build walls, and exit this liberal international order at this moment is precisely the wrong answer. He says we need to tap into the big-heartedness that conceived the Marshall Plan, the foresight that planned the Bretton Woods, that was planned at Bretton Woods, the audacity that proposed the United Nations or world government. He said defending the liberal international order requires that we resist forces of European disintegration and maintain our long-standing insistence on a Europe whole, free, and at peace. And then he says, in 2 days, the United States will engage in the act that has defined our exceptional democracy for more than 200 years, the peaceful transition of power from one leader, Barack Obama, and one political party to another, the future President Trump at that time. And he says, it is my hope and expectation that the next president and vice president and our leaders in Congress will ensure that the United States continue to fulfill our historic responsibility as the indispensable nation. In other words, our leadership role of the world government. Of course, I don't think he fully realized what President Trump was going to do at that point, obviously. And he says, it is only by championing the liberal international order, by continuing to invest in our security, reaffirming our shared values, expanding the cause of liberty around the world, that will retain our position, the United States position of leadership. And so in his last speech, here you have it, at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, early 2017, it's no question where Joe Biden stands on globalism. He's a globalist. He believes in a world government. If he gets in office, everything that Donald Trump has done to pull us out of world government, on most of those issues, he's going to put us right back into it. And you'll see that as we go through the program today. That's one thing I do not want to be a part of in the end time, the world government. Because the Antichrist is going to rule over that. We don't want to be a part of that. He's going to rule and reign on people with just thumb down. I don't want a part of that here in the United States, and I know that you don't either. So you got a question. What's going to happen in November? What am I going to do? Trying to make a decision. That's a pretty easy one for me. Now, I'm just going to jump from issue to issue here. You and I both know that there is only one reason in history, we're going to talk about gun control just a little bit. There's only one reason in history for the universal disarmament of citizens. You've seen it in other nations throughout history. They went in and disarmed their people. Why would they do that? It's absolute control with no means of resistance. The Second Amendment states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, if you go to Joe Biden's website, he has a plan on guns. Now, you know where President Trump stands. Like I said, you're going to know where President Trump stands on all these issues today. He's pro-gun. He's pro-NRA. You know, keep your guns, whatever you want to do. That's President Trump. Joe Biden, on the other hand, he's a little bit different than that. You know, he says, well, you know, I've got a shotgun. You can have a shotgun, this, that, and the other. But according to his website, he says that he wants to have to buy back the assault weapons. He considers an AR-15 an assault weapon. He said, I want to buy back the assault weapons and high-capacity magazines already in our communities. And it says that Biden will also institute a program to buy back the weapons of war, he calls them, currently on our streets, an AR-15. He said this will give individuals who now possess assault weapons, again, he thinks an AR-15 is an assault weapon, or which it's not, or high-capacity magazines. He said it will give them two options: sell the weapons to the government. So all you guys out there with an AR-15, you might be asked to sell that back to the government here before long, if he's elected, or register them under the National Firearms Act. So if it's not registered now, if you bought it in a kit or something like that, you're going to have to register it. Look on his website. And then it says to reduce stockpiling of weapons. In order to reduce the stockpiling of firearms, Joe Biden supports legislation restricting the number of firearms an individual may purchase per month to one. And then at the CNN town hall on the eve of 2020, the primary, the South Carolina primary, Joe Biden stated, he said, I taught constitutional law. No amendment is absolute. Now, we're talking about the Second Amendment to our Constitution here, you understand. He said, no amendment is absolute. He said, none of you can stand up, despite the First Amendment on free speech, and yell fire here. Well, that's true. He said, you'd be arrested. And he said, from the beginning, the founders said, not everyone is able to have a gun, and you can't have any weapon that you want. The point of the matter is that from the very beginning, you're not allowed to have any weapon that you want to have. You can only have a government-approved weapon. That's what he's saying. He said this idea that you're going to need an AR-15 or any other assault weapon. Again, he's calling an AR-15 an assault weapon. That's not what it is. Or you need any clip that has hundreds of rounds in it. He said that's absolutely bizarre. And so what's he going to do? He says, I don't want to take your guns, but at the end of the day, he doesn't want you having any, he wants you to have some old shotgun or something like that. They don't want you to have a modern day rifle for target practice or to go out and hunt wild hogs or whatever. That's what we do, but they don't want you to have that freedom. They want to regulate that. Put restrictions on it. Buy those guns back. But I want you to note something. He's all on his website. He talks about that the gun problem is this horrible health issue, and that people are dying from gun violent deaths here in America. But I want you to note something here, and this is kind of a hypocritical type situation. According to the Gun Violence Archive, in 2019, just here in America, in 2019, the total number of gun violence deaths was just under 40,000. It was 39,451. Of those, homicides, murders, and unintentional deaths by guns, 15,361. Suicides were 24,090. So even if you include suicides in gun violence deaths, about 40,000 last year. But, and they're all about, we got to stop that. 40,000 people, and 40,000 deaths, yes, that's horrible. But we got to stop the 40,000. We're going to put restrictions on this, that, and the other. But according to the Guttmacher Institute, approximately 862,320 abortions were performed back in 2017 in the United States of America. And yet, Joe Biden is pro-abortion. Think about that. We've got to put restrictions on guns, because there's so much gun violence, less than 40,000 violent murders and 24,000 of those were suicides, but yet the 6 to 7 to 800,000 abortions a year, we've got to protect those no matter what. Even though killing is occurring on both hands here. You see what I'm saying? It's just about agendas and all these different things. So really it boils down to, what kind of America do I want to live in throughout the end time? That's kind of where we're looking at this. Because I'm looking at moral issues, government control issues, prophetic issues, Israel, world government. Where do we stand on these things going throughout the end time? That's the way I look at all this stuff. And it's, what kind of America do you and I want to live in? Because obviously you've seen over the past several years, I never really got involved in politics until, I don't know, maybe the last 15, 16, 17 years. But man, I've saw how you can see how politicians affect your life, even a Christian. I'm a Christian individual, and I try to live my life according to the Bible, and yet we've got politicians here in America that have approved, and a Supreme Court that have approved and legalized same-sex marriage in all 50 states. But I live in America. I live right here just north of Dallas, Texas. But yet politicians have done this in the country that I live in and that I love and that I'm a patriot for. And so I don't like that. So when it comes times to an election, I make sure I know what each issue is, all of the salient issues, line them up as best I can to the Bible, and then I make my decision. You say, well, you can't line them all up to the Bible. I understand that. But I'll line up as many of them as I can, especially in the eyes of Bible prophecy, looking at what's coming in the end time. So it's very important. So that leads me into abortion. Obviously, President Trump is against abortion, but then you look at his potential his potential opponent. CNS News yesterday said that Biden said that abortion is an essential health care service, especially during the time of this pandemic. Yesterday, former Vice President Joe Biden underlined his shift on the issue of abortion, and he described it as an essential health care service, especially during the coronavirus pandemic. In other words, don't shut down the abortion clinics, even though most of them are somebody making a conscious decision. I want to go in and have this operation, this surgery, this procedure. Like in a dentist, it's got to be an emergency situation, but not with an abortion. And so you can kind of see here, it's a messed up system. They said that, Joe Biden said, we need to ensure that women have access to all health services during this crisis. And he said abortion is an essential health care service. Now remember, he said that all the gun violence in America, we've got to stymie that. We've got to stop it. But yet he's saying, but we need to make sure that if somebody wants an abortion, they can go in and do that. I don't understand this stuff. He also said, and in the case health care is delayed, means health care denied. States should not be using a public health crisis. Listen at this statement. He said states should not be using a public health crisis to infringe on a woman's constitutional rights. Well, what does it mean during a public health crisis to infringe on everybody's rights and make them stay at home here in the United States of America? But yet, he's saying we shouldn't infringe on a woman's constitutional rights during a public health crisis. We shouldn't infringe on her rights. But yet they did it for the other 350 million of us. Some of these things, I'm scratching a hole in my head. He also said, well, look, I think you're going right down the path that people need to follow you on. That's what Hillary Clinton said. This was while she was endorsing him. She said, I think you're going right down the path people need to follow you on. She said, which also includes references to the Affordable Care Act and health care cost. I'm sitting back I'm watching these things and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So, President Trump, anti-world government. Joe Biden, advocate of world government. President Trump, pro-gun, pro-NRA type situation. Joe Biden, anti. President Trump, pro-abortion. Or President Trump, anti-abortion, excuse me. Joe Biden, now openly pro-abortion. Okay, the next issue, Israel. Israel National News stated that, I think this was yesterday, that one of Biden's leading advisors has stated that he's opposed to annexation of the West Bank, you know what they're talking about in the peace agreement, but stated that he will keep the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. I read the article where he stated that he chastised President Trump for moving the embassy. He did not think it should be moved to Jerusalem. He would have left it in Tel Aviv. But he said, you know, I can't believe he did that. It was crazy to do that. But since he did it, there's really no point in moving it back. So it's not like Joe Biden was a huge advocate of moving it there to begin with. He would never have recognized. During the 8 years of the Obama administration, they didn't recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And so when we talk about the annexation situation going on, you understand the election, I said, just over 6 months away. And Netanyahu is watching this because Joe Biden's the opponent to Donald Trump. Again, unless something crazy happens and Hillary Clinton ends up at the 11th hour stepping in. But you understand, Netanyahu is sitting over in Israel watching the Israeli elections. He's wanting to start annexing July 1. And so he's wondering, how's this all going to play out? It's all coming in as a factor in their elections and what's going on in their government, in our elections, what's going on in our government. So who knows? I know there will be a peace agreement, but how it's all going to play out, we don't know.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank Endtime for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listen to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Experience the Holy Land in the most amazing way. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter for our upcoming Israel tour. For more information, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
So on the issue of annexation of the West Bank into Israel, which is mentioned in President Trump's peace plan, Tony Blinken, who's the senior foreign policy advisor for Joe Biden, he commented on this is what Israel National News, I think, reported this. He commented on a possible move by Israel to apply sovereignty over Judea, Samaria. Again, it's in President Trump's Peace to Prosperity peace plan. The deal of the century is what they call it. And they're wanting to start doing this July 1. But the article said that the issue on the table in the wake of the agreement is on a unity government between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Benny Gantz in Israel, you understand the situation, states that the government could apply sovereignty to parts of Judea and Samaria in July. But speaking on a webcast hosted by the Jewish Democratic Council of America and quoted by the Jewish Insider, Blinken, Biden's advisor, said that Biden would, he said that he did not want to prejudge what might or might not happen in the context of a Biden administration because lots of things can happen between now and then in the next 6 months. However, he stressed that Joe Biden has been literally opposed to the annexation. Now, you understand, President Trump is all in on the annexation. Diametrically opposed to that is Joe Biden. He's opposed to the annexation. Now, you understand, this is going to be Israel annexing parts of the Promised Land. Judea and Samaria is parts of the Promised Land. Joe Biden is against that. Why? The international community is against it. They see it as an illegal, it's illegal in the eyes of the international community and international law. Joe Biden is an advocate. He's a globalist. So he believes in a world government. So anything the international community's against, he's against. If it's against international law, Joe Biden's against it. So he's against the annexation of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank into Israel. He's against that. Well, look at the situation on the ground. Prime Minister Netanyahu, he's going to do everything he can to try to annex that before our elections. You watch. He's going to try to start July 1. So they also noted in the article that Biden has been on record several times stating that unilateral steps taken by either side, Palestinians or Israelis, that makes the prospect of a negotiated two-state outcome less likely, and that it's something that he opposes, and that includes annexation. So he's against that. Why? He's a globalist. On the issue of the U.S. Embassy in Israel, Blinken said that the Biden administration would keep the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, and he told viewers that he was, that's reversing Donald Trump's decision, moving the U.S. Embassy back to Tel Aviv, that it would not make sense practically and politically. So he was saying that he's not going to reverse Donald Trump's decision. He's going to leave it in Jerusalem. But the big thing to me is, number one, he didn't want to move it there to begin with. He chastised Trump for doing it. And also, God gave that land to Israel back with Abraham in Genesis chapter 15. And yet, because the international community is against it, Joe Biden's against it. And, I mean, you guys make your own decisions, but, I mean, I just don't know. You got to look at what's coming in the near future with the peace agreement and the world government and all these different issues coming down the pike prophetically, and some of the moral issues, abortion, the LGBT agendas, and say, man, what do we want what kind of government do we want over America, the nation that we live in, going off into the end time? That's the question here. And that's up to you guys. You vote for whoever you want to. We'll go from there. The next point, obviously, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this the other day, but because of this program, and I was going through what Biden and his stance on things, I wanted to mention it again. But you got to look at it. When it's concerning Israel, it's Trump versus Biden, diametrically opposed on how they feel. Biden can say, yes, I'm pro-Israel, this, that, and the other. But you normally don't pay any attention to what somebody says. You look at what they do. Look at their track record. Oh, I'm for Israel, but if you've done a lot of things that are anti-Israel, you got to look at them and say, well, you say one thing, but I'm watching what you've been doing. What's your track record? Back on December 27th of 2016, and I'm only going to spend a very little bit of time here, but for those of you that didn't hear it, the Tablet magazine said that there was a phone call from Biden, and it was said to precipitate a Ukraine's UN vote as yes. What are we talking about? We're talking about Resolution 2334, a UN Security Council resolution that says Israel's right to East Jerusalem and the West Bank is in violation of international law. The tablet confirmed that one tangible consequence of these high-level U.S. campaign was a phone call. Now, this was in 2016, just prior to President Obama leaving office, just prior to President Trump coming in. It was in, I think, December of that year, December 2016. At that time, Vice President Joe Biden made a call to Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, and it succeeded in changing Ukraine's vote from an expected abstention to a yes vote. And according to one U.S. national security source, the Obama administration needed a 14-0 vote because we allowed it to pass. We abstained. He needed a 14-0 vote to justify that what the source called the optics of its own abstention. We were the one abstention. And the question was, did Biden put pressure? The question was asked, did Biden put pressure on the Ukrainians? And the answer was categorically yes. Now, that was from a high-placed figure within the Israeli government with strong connections to the Ukrainian government sources, moving on, who confirmed to Tablet that the Americans have put direct pressure on both the Ukrainian delegation and Poroshenko personally in Kiev. So that the source said, and he affirmed, that Biden told them to do it is 1,000% true. Well, of course, the Obama administration denied the incident, but you have to wonder what Benjamin Netanyahu's stance is on the call. He was having high-level officials in Israel saying that absolutely he did make a call, 1,000%. Benjamin Netanyahu knows that. He's the prime minister of Israel right now. He's looking at this going, hold on a minute. I remember Resolution 2334, which is still on the books, and he's saying, I remember that. I remember the phone call that Joe Biden made to the Ukrainian president, Poroshenko, to get him to vote yes on this instead of abstaining. And then I remember the U.S. administration under President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden allowing this to pass. Now he's saying, in the eyes of the UN Security Council Resolution 2334, I'm going illegal in the eyes of the international community. I'm going to go ahead and annex this property, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, into Israel. And he's saying that I'm looking at this and there's a potential that I will stare one of them in the face should Trump not be elected and Joe Biden get it. I'm going to have to work with him as the United States president coming up here in just over 6 months. Can you imagine what's going through Netanyahu's mind at this point? So, well, the UN Security Council Resolution 2334 says, like I said, December 2016, the Obama administration abstained from voting on the UN Security Council resolution, and it allowed it to become international law. Item number 1 of that resolution clearly states Israel's presence in East Jerusalem. Now, I'm talking about where the Temple Mount is, the Mount of Olives. All of that's included in this, that they conquered in the 67 Six Days War, that it's a flagrant violation of international law. Vice President Joe Biden was influential in getting Ukraine to vote yes for this. And now you know why he's against annexation, because he's a globalist. It actually states in the resolution, it reaffirms the establishment by Israel of settlements in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967. Those are not Palestinian territories. You understand the story of what happened there, and they were invaded and they conquered all that area and drove Jordan back to on the other side of the Jordan River. It was not Palestinian territory. There were Arabs there, and there were Jews actually living in Israel as well. And so there were Arabs. The Jews there were called Palestinians as well. You know, the Jerusalem Post used to be called the Palestinian Post, because that area was called Palestine at that point. And so I'm not going to get off into all that. We've talked about it a million times, but I just want to give you a little history about what's going on here and the gravity of the situation with Joe Biden. In the resolution, it includes East Jerusalem. The international community says that it has no legal validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law and is a major obstacle to the achievement of the two-state solution and a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. So this is the mindset of the international community against the eastern section of the city of Jerusalem and the West Bank, which is what Netanyahu is wanting to annex July 1. And it's in the peace plan put out by the Trump administration for them to annex that. They're going to go ahead and approve their sovereignty. They're just waiting for them to go ahead and annex it. The United States is going to approve it. And so you can see what's going on here in the mind of Netanyahu in Israel saying, who am I going to have to work with in 6 months? And so you can see the gravity of the situation with this election coming up. This election in the history of the United States is going to be very, very, very critical. Not only in history, but in the future. According to Bible prophecy, we know there's going to be a peace agreement signed. We know that Israel, or the United States, is going to stand with and protect Israel all the way through the final 3.5 years. Revelation 12:14. So, how would that be possible with a Joe Biden in there? I don't know. You say, well, hey, from that right there, can we predict who the next president's going to be? No, because I wish I could. I'd be a bazillionaire. But I can't right now because some of these things we've got to live through. We've got to say, okay, God could put Joe Biden in there and this thing still work out. I don't know how it would, but with God, all things are possible. So some of the things we're just going to have to live through. We're going to have to do the best we can. We're going to have to pray, seek God's face, ask for His will to be done in our lives, and then watch how it all plays out. That's the best thing we can do right now. But I'm just telling you what's going on, the gravity of the situation between the Trump administration getting elected and a possible Biden administration, and how it plays out with Israel, the world government, and everything else. Okay, let's move on to another issue. The LG. Okay, well, why not? We're coming up to a break. We're going to get into the LGBTQ issue. Where does a Joe Biden administration stand on that? We're going to get into that when we get back from the break, because the two camps are pretty much diametrically opposed to each other on every issue. So we're going to talk about it. What's the agendas that are going to be pushed in a potential Biden administration?
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-END-TIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
You know, probably along with me and millions of other Christians here in the United States and around the world, I was shocked when the Obama administration, under the Obama administration, the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage in all 50 states in the United States. That was back in, 2015. I was shocked. I thought, there's no way that'll happen in the United States of America. We were founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and we just, that's never going to happen here. But obviously, since from the early 60s, when they took prayer and Bible reading and things like that out of schools, we started pushing God out of our society. We took a moral decline, and then we got to the point from the early 60s to 2015 where we could legalize same-sex marriage in all 50 states. I mean, up till 1960, you understand, the act of sodomy in America was illegal in all 50 states. 2015, it was legalized in all 50 states. So I was shocked in 2015. We all were. I thought, oh, God, what's going on in our nation? But when the Trump administration came in, he started ending things like don't ask, don't tell, and transgender serving in the military, this, that, and the other. So we didn't criminalize again or make it illegal for the same-sex marriage in all 50 states, but we hadn't really been pushing it, I guess you could say, that administration. So if you look at what Joe Biden wants to do, remember, he was the vice president under the administration that got this pushed through. Well, he recently said that the LGBTQ rights would be his number one legislative priority when he gets in office. So what happened? Well, Joe Biden, he was speaking during the human rights, this was back in 2019. He was speaking during the human rights campaign in Columbus, Ohio, at a dinner at the Ohio State University on June 1 of 2019. And he was just a presidential candidate at that time. He declared that the Equality Act would be on his top legislative priority, and it was an effort to enshrine the LGBTQ protections into the nation's labor and civil rights laws. And the Equality Act would address many discriminatory practices, what they consider, I'm going to say quote unquote, discriminatory practices. And he said, when you say, okay, Dave, define a discriminatory practice. So a discriminatory practice, they would say as a cake maker. You've heard about some of these. A guy who owns a bakery or whatever, a guy or a lady, whatever, owns a bakery. And I guess there were sweet cakes up in Oregon. A lady owned a bakery shop too. They had been serving homosexual men and women for years. Cupcakes, cakes, whatever. They just, they didn't care how they lived. That was their business. They just wanted to sell them cupcakes and cookies and junk. So they've been doing that for years. But when the couple came to the guy in Colorado, I can't remember his name, and said, we want you to make us a cake. The guy made beautiful cakes and did icing and did all that stuff. He said, we want you to bake us a cake celebrating our marriage. The guy said, look, I'm happy to sell you anything in my store, but I can't do that because that goes against my religious beliefs. They sued him. It went all the way to Supreme Court, and he won. I think Sweet Cakes by Melissa, I think they ended up putting her out of business. She had to go to work in her home. She was fined all kinds of money. Well, those would be considered discriminatory practices. A baker, a photographer, a print shop, anything like that. They don't want that. So in the Equality Act, it kind of protects against all that kind of stuff. Well, Joe Biden is saying, hey, one of my first priorities in office, I'm going to get that thing rammed through. He said it'll be the first thing I asked to be done. Well, so you can sit there and go, man, wow, that's going to be a different administration than what we have now. Well, LifeSite News says that Biden announced that he will reinstate the transgender military policy that Trump killed back on April 27th. What? I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago. Joe Biden said that if he becomes president, that he would restore the policy followed during the Obama administration that allowed transgender individuals to serve openly in the U.S. military. In June of 2016, the Obama and Biden administration overturned the previous ban on transgender individuals serving openly without hiding their gender identity. And they said that the Biden plan to advance the LGBTQ plus equality in America and around the world was posted on Biden's campaign website, but that Trump reversed this policy, barring transgender people from serving openly. It says that in the Biden plan on his website. And that this is this says this on Biden's website, this is a discriminatory and detrimental act towards our national security, and that every American who is qualified to serve in our military should be able to do so regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and without having to hide who they are. Now, again, I'm reading this off the Biden's website. Biden said the plan will direct the U.S. Department of Defense to allow transgender service members to serve openly and receive needed medical treatment and be free of discrimination. So, in our U.S. military, imagine you go join the military. 20-year-old young man goes in there, tells them, I was born a woman. So you're the officer on the other side of the desk. What do you do with the guy? And where does he go? Does he go with the females? Does he go with the guys? What happens? These people would want to force that guy to make him go with the females, with the, and not to hide that. So you can see, as I'm reading this stuff, I read it all day long, and I'm reading this, and I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. Where are we at as a nation where we got people wanting to push that kind of stuff? I mean, number one, to me, as a Christian individual, it's diametrically opposed to the Word of God. Somebody's got to say it. I said it. And beyond that, it is, what kind of nation do we want to live in here? Where they would force 50 or 100 females to have to live with a male who says he's a female. I mean, it's like a cobweb. You can't feel your way through it. It's crazy. So this is the kind of thinking that's going on in the intelligentsia of our world. You understand? They're pushing this stuff. I think there's ulterior motives to it at the end of the day. I think that they're trying to tear down our society so that way they can build it up in their image. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this, but at the end of the day, there's an evil spirit behind all of it. That's why Hollywood's pushing it. That's why, these are huge agendas in our world, because there is an agenda by an evil spirit at the end of the day. Revelation 13:2, that's trying to create a world government. They do not want parallel societies. They want people all lined up to this. And when people stand on the Word of God, they don't look towards a government for solutions. They look towards God. And they don't want that. That's why when the United Nations is a humanistic organization, they don't want God, they don't want the Bible, they don't want anything like that at the United Nations. They want you to depend upon them. That's why they're saying in this coronavirus pandemic, hey, look to world government for the solutions. We will have global vaccines. We'll have, we're the answer. No, that's not the answer. I don't want anything to do with the world government. I talked about that the other day. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm just saying this is the kind of things you got to step way back, because you can get caught up in these issues, one or two or three of them. They can rule your life, and you think, I don't even know what to think anymore. No, step back, understand what the Bible says, look at these issues and say, no, I know, according to Scripture, I can't do that one, I can't do that one, I can't do that one. So it's a pretty easy decision at this point. It really becomes, it's super easy to me. But I talk to people all day long that they're trying to weigh out issues, and I'm like, let me give you one scripture to help you weigh that issue. It's really quick. And, if you're honest with yourself and if you want to serve God, it really becomes pretty easy at that point. So then, of course, you remember, and I'm going to go through some of these real quick. I don't have a whole lot of time. You remember Trump's withdrawal from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. Well, there was I could go through all of it. You know, we've had problems with Iran back since 1979, and because of that, because the UN Security Council realized that Iran was trying to get a nuclear bomb, the 5 members plus Germany signed the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. Donald Trump realized that money was flowing to them, to Iran, from everywhere, and there was a sunset clause that was going to allow them to get a nuclear weapon anyway. So he says, no, we're not doing that anymore. So he pulled out. Well, Joe Biden has said when he gets in there, if they'll line everything back up with the original plan, that he's going to go ahead and join us back into that. And so I thought, you've got to be kidding me. You're going to you would want to take the sanctions off, let money start flowing to them again, and just sit there and hope and dream that they wouldn't get a nuclear deal, have a nuclear bomb someday? It's not going to happen. So that's another thing that he would do. He said that he would get back into the JCPOA, or that Iran nuclear deal. He'd put the United States back in that. The other thing that he would do is the Paris Climate Agreement. You remember that Donald Trump pulled us out of that because it's part of the Sustainable Development Goals. Those were signed on to by all the nations in 2015. And then the commitment to all of that was the Paris Climate Agreement in December of 2015. There were all the nations of the world committed to implementing the environmental portion of the Sustainable Development Goals. They go together hand in hand. Well, once Donald Trump realized he doesn't believe in human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change. Once he realized what was going on, he pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. He said, hey, all we're doing is giving this millions and millions and millions of dollars. We're not going to get anything from it. It's a hoax, so we're done. He pulls us out. Well, Al Gore, you remember him, he said he's fully endorsed Joe Biden now, and he has said, because Joe, I know that you'll put us back in, you'll re-enter the United States back into the Paris Agreement. Al Gore has made millions and millions and millions of dollars scaring everybody to death over this human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change, which none of his predictions are coming to pass. And yet he knows that Joe Biden is on board, and he will put the United States back into, on day one of a Biden administration, he'll put us back into the Paris Climate Agreement. So now you can see, it's just, what kind of world do we want to live in, folks? I mean, this is part of the world government, and day one, he's going to put us back into it in a Biden administration.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.